So that's James's dinner today, and the bell pepper juice and carrot juice. I'm not having as much because I don't think I need as much right now. And I'm going to be talking about a few books and a video. So, I guess while I'm waiting for James, I'll talk about this. Oh, maybe I won't because he's here now. We'll see what he wants to talk about first. But this one will be quick. I can talk about this one quick. So it's very brief. The author, this is Beauty Water by Tori Holmes, and there's a lot of pictures of her naked back and, you know, part of her breast or whatever. She's very pretty. And honestly, the book seems like it's thick, but there's a lot less information here than there is in this tiny little book. Now, I did write down a few recipes that I want to try. They're mostly for different teas, yet it takes a couple pages to explain how to make a tea, apparently. Nettle Glow, page 38, Calendula Commer, 40, Valerian Wine Down, 45, Mugwort Dreamer, 49, Winter Fire Cider, 74, Chaga Coffee, 94, St. John's Wort Sunshine, 108. So I am interested in trying those recipes, or at least interested enough that I wrote them down. And I suppose, do you want me to talk about
Yeah, you talk
this
about
first?
it, I'll talk about it. Yeah, sure.
Or do you want to talk about your stuff first?
Yeah, just go with what you feel like.
Okay, so Whose Water Is It Anyway? By Maud Barlow. And Naomi Klein gave a little blurb on that. And honestly, it is great to have some information about Canada, about Canadian politics and the environment and stuff like that, because we don't often hear about that here in Canada. Somehow we often hear about American stuff, but
Well, the United States is 10 times our population. And at least that times us in terms of economic club.
yeah. But anyway,
And really, when you take into account how much stuff, and we are supposed to be the sinners when it comes to our tar sands. No, we're not. You know, like we don't get any benefit out of it.
yeah,
It's our flunky politicians who are doing the will. It's not just the Americans. You know how, but the Norwegians are moving in there,
yeah,
right, using their heritage fund to move in there, and or whatever they call it, their fund, from the oil reserves, and it would be Shell, which is basically Dutch and English, and BP. What is that? Oh, it's British Petroleum. So it's a lot of scums who are involved in that kind of stuff. And, we end up getting fingers pointed at us.
no, we end up with the cleanup bit.
Yeah, especially
all the
our
pollution. That's
the
what we get.
indigenous people up there.
Oh yeah,
on
they
the reservation.
for sure.
So so there's some kid from the Scandinavian countries, I think Sweden is here in Alberta, pointing the finger at us and stuff like
Yeah. Okay, well, Norwegians, get out.
that. Well, she's not Norwegian, but yeah, you know, I don't necessarily believe in that. But if they're going to be pointing the finger at us and polluting us, and then
Please
we
take
get the
your
bill.
business out
Yeah,
elsewhere. We
your
don't
dirty
want
business.
It. Yeah. So anyway, Whose Water Is It Anyway? Page 4, she advertises her other book from 2013, Blue Future, Protecting Water for People and the Planet Forever. And I mean, I didn't like it when I was reading Nancy Drew. That turned me off right away of Nancy Drew books, and I don't like hearing about other people's, in my other book, blah, 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 blah. No, I mean, the book's short enough. Just if you didn't, you're writing a book on the same topic, pretty close together in years, and honestly, you didn't do a good enough job on the other one. So
This is Maud Barlow.
yeah. Anyway,
She shouldn't be
Page-
writing this stuff for money.
she's supposed to be like a public intellectual or something like that, right? Where does she get her money? You keep on.
Page 22. 9% of all plastic bottles don't get recycled. 23. People eat plastic and seafood. 2018 microplastics have been found in human stool. A study found microplastics in 93% of bottled water tested in the world. On average, there were 10.4 particles of plastic per liter that were 100 microns or bigger. This is 2 times the level of microplastics in tap water. Page 25, 75% of all mineral production in the country is handled by private companies. Most are foreign owned. 3 private companies own more than 90% of the water rights for power generation for the whole country. Agriculture uses 85% of all water used in Canada, and most of the crop is exported. Page 28, Guatemala issued 350 mining licenses for copper since 2007. Page 34, she says water is assumed to be endless in supply. And that is not true at all. I don't know who thinks that. I certainly don't. And the capitalists who are polluting it don't think that. They would like there to be water shortages so that they could make money off of it.
Selling clean water.
Yeah, selling clean water. So I don't think anybody assumes that there's an endless supply of water, of clean water.
Or even of water.
No. Page 58, 98% of El Salvador's water is contaminated. 66, it is said that Canada has 20% of the world's fresh water, but this is only true if we were to drain every lake and river in the country. In fact, Canada has about 6.5% of the planet's accessible water. Page 67, Canada...
I don't know what she means by
I don't know either. 67, Canada will lose 80% of its mountain glaciers within the next 50 years. Canada now leads the world in the destruction of untouched forests. Canada allows widespread use of glyphosate and hormone disruptor atrazine. Industrial farming is the major cause for insect decline. 40% of insect species are now threatened with extinction. There are no Canadian national standards for drinking water. Page 69, the only real water protection laws Canadians had: the Fisheries Act, the Navigable Waters Protection Act, renamed the Navigation Protection Act, and the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act were gutted by the previous Conservative federal government, leaving 99% of all lakes and rivers in Canada unprotected by federal law. 70.
That would be the Harper.
Yeah. Nestle Guelph area pumps up to 4.7 million liters per day from 2 wells, despite that its permits to do so have expired. Until recently, the company was paying only $3.71 per million liters. Page 71.
That's
nations.
Nestle. That.
Yes.
I understand Nestle ain't an American company.
Nope. I'm getting to
What
that.
is it?
Page,
Swish or something
yeah.
like that? French.
Page 71. 6 nations of the Grand River is downstream from Nestle and is demanding that Nestle shuts down. 90% of the community don't have running water in their homes. The Council of Canadians poll of December 2018 showed that 82% of Ontario residents want the provincial government to stop issuing permits permanently for extracting groundwater to sell as bottled water, no matter what the price the companies are paying for it. 72. 80% of China's surface and groundwater is polluted. Page 91. Nestle's headquarters in Switzerland. England and Wales water was privatized in the 1980s. Scotland still has public running water. So, I wouldn't recommend this book or this book. But you go on about Madam Secretary Season 5 with Tia Leone.
If you like politics and stuff like that, it's actually pretty good. They seem to stick to scenarios that could be realistic. The Americans are basically portrayed as good guys, and that's going to stick in the craw for some people, maybe a lot of people. I'm going to tell you something. Americans are bad guys, but everyone's worse than them. That's even with Trump. What the hell? Everyone's worse than them, except maybe Canada. And I don't know, maybe if some former regimes in Europe, but Europe's gone pretty thoroughly right-wing, so everyone's worse than the U.S. So hands off the U.S. You only hear these fake left-wingers saying, hands off Iran, hands off Venezuela, hands off the U.S., you morons.
All right. So, are you going to talk about?
And moron in my parlance just means dull. That's the original meaning in Greek, dull. Okay. I don't want to compare mentally challenged people with you morons. Anyway, go on.
You know, the kohlrabi is good. Cooked like this.
What?
The Russia trap. How our shadow war with Russia could spiral into nuclear catastrophe by George S. Beebe? How do you say that?
Probably should be Biba, but he probably says B. Americans are pretty bad. They're the best we've got of the big powers, but one thing they don't handle well is other language. So it's Beeb. Anyway, and it could be Beeb. I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah, I thought this guy was going to be some crazy, crazed left-winger or something like that, big left-winger. But he does have a point. It's kind of the point that Dean Rusk had in 1962. So he was America's, I believe it was, Secretary of State, so he's kind of responsible for foreign affairs. So this was just before Kennedy was whacked, about a year before Kennedy was whacked. So get ready. Yeah, this is going to be some politically incorrect stuff. For fake left-wingers out there, Kennedy was just a rash, foolish guy, and he, he's just like was a young pup, too much testosterone, all that kind of stuff. All the Kennedys were that way. Horrible president, worse than Eisenhower. So, you might as well tune out, while you got the chance, because you're going to be gnashing your teeth, You're going to be like someone in hell right now. They'll be weeping and gnashing their teeth. So, Dean Rusk, he's talking about the Cold War, and he's talking about Vietnam specifically. And he says, we can't win in Vietnam. We can't. We start winning. Mao Zedong is going to send his troops in just like he did with Korea. Once we were flushing the commies out of North Korea, Mao made it a big, basically like a world war. And Dean Rusk is saying we can't afford that. What he says basically implies is Mao Zedong is crazy. No, is that melodramatic? No, he doesn't state it in melodramatic fashion. He says he's just unreliable. We don't know what exactly we'll do. Like a couple of years before China announced their nuclear capability, and it, of course, became even more of a dangerous game. So Dean Rusk says, what we got to do is just extend this war until Mao dies. And guess what? America basically won that war according to what they had to do, set up by Dean Rusk. They missed it. They lost, but they lost by 1 year. The war, I think Mao died in 76, and the war went on until 75. So what they did was basically they juked it out without causing a bigger conflagration. They definitely avoided nuclear war and stuff like that. And some of you fake left-wingers have probably hit the roof. You probably hit the roof, hit the floor, bounced several times, hitting the roof and the floor. But here's Khrushchev on Mao Zedong. This was a repeated happening with Mao Zedong and Khrushchev. Mao Zedong would say to Khrushchev, let's start World War III. Let's start World War III. And he didn't say that once, he said it several times. The first time he said it, Khrushchev said, are you crazy? And that was a rhetorical question, but Mao answered it, no, we'll win. Now that is just crazy. Absolutely. Mao was a sociopath, but he was also a psychopath. And the Americans would have understood this. And so they were saying, like way back when, we don't know what's going to happen. And this guy, of course, doesn't say that. He's a diplomat and all this sort of stuff. But he said, if we make too many moves that are going to be interpreted by Putin, how could I make a mistake like that? Putin. I gotta use the right word. Anyway, like he's going to get all defensive and all this kind of stuff, and what we're doing is risking World War III. And he might be right. Putin doesn't have a strong hold on reality. One guy I know who I really respect, knows Russia, recently said to me, make no mistake, Putin is smart. And I was saying, what I said it quite respectfully, because I respect this person. I said, yeah, he's sharp, not smart. And why isn't he really smart? Here's the deal. He's trying to break apart the European Union. He's trying to break apart NATO. And my question was, how long will it take for Germany, once NATO and its nuclear umbrella to protect Germany and the rest of Europe from Russia, nuclear-armed Russia, armed to the teeth, how long will it take for Germany to have nuclear capability? And that was more like a rhetorical question. But my answer was, yesterday. And that wasn't a rhetorical flourish. Oftentimes when people say that, they're exaggerating. But the Germans were working on nuclear bombs with Brazil. Was it back in the 80s? Maybe in the 70s. They've got the capability. And all they need is the will, and then a whole lot of energy and a little bit of time. But yesterday, they've already got it, and the capability, and all they need is what? The will. And you don't think Germany, not being under the American nuclear umbrella, facing a Russia armed to the teeth, wouldn't give Germany the will to have it? Of course they'd have it. And then, would there be a reconstituted German empire? Well, there just might be. If I'm sitting in Poland right now wants out of the European Union, but once NATO breaks down, they'll be going, geez, who do we go to for help? Who are we going to call? Like, we're Catholics. The Germans are kind of almost half Catholic. And you've got these Eastern Orthodox / communist / crazies in Russia. Who are we going to call? Any state in between Germany and Russia that isn't Eastern Orthodox is going to come crying eventually to the Germans. So all of a sudden you'll have a reconstituted, informal, for a while, German Empire. I didn't like the German Empire in World War I. It was pretty nasty. And then, so that was the Second Empire, and then the Third Empire, the Third Reich. When you hear about the Third Reich, you should be thinking Hitler. I don't like the idea of a German Empire. It's pretty sad. So this is what Putin is setting himself up for, the whole world for, but himself up for. A long time ago, I said Putin was put in place to take apart the Russian Empire. That's the Russian, not the German or the American or the European or the Chinese Empire. He's so incompetent. What he is a tactician, but he's not a great strategic thinker. Who was like that? Oh yeah, Hitler was that way. He's maybe pretty good with tactics, but once you get involved in a battle, what do you do? What do you do? But strategy is about, things like bigger questions like, do we really need this battle? Do we really need this war? What should our war aims be? You notice, like with the Americans in the Cold War, Dean Rusk, they're saying, geez, tactically we can win Vietnam. They could actually have gone all the way, just forced the commies out, back into China. And they're saying, is that really necessary? These are the things that kind of happen, at least in semi-fake democracies. People actually say, yeah, we got to look to the future. But when you get a thing that isn't even a fake democracy, well, it's a fake democracy in Russia, there's no accountability. So guy just goes, l'état c'est moi, or la loi c'est moi. The law, it's me, that's Louis XIV. But that's basically Putin. Now it's basically Hitler. Now this guy is saying, it's a mistake to compare Putin with Hitler. And people are doing that. And I'm going, it's a mistake not to compare him to Hitler. What he's done is he's taken over a nation that was prostrated, but not taken over. What happened to Germany after World War I is they had to surrender. They were actually still sitting. The army was outside of Germany. And the people inside Germany never really got a sense of defeat. So they're looking around for people to blame. The stab in the back, the Jews did it, the capitalists did it, the socialists did it. They're actually the ones who surrendered. They had a German revolution, and the leaders of Germany in World War I, they said to the socialists, well, we lost this war, but you can officially get the blame for it. We're giving power to you. That's Ludendorff and von Hindenburg. And to a large extent, you see, that's why the Allies, like fake left-wingers don't understand. They say, like Germany, like there's no need for all the ruination and, in Japan and Germany, like, the bombing, like it was just awful. The Americans, the Germans would have surrendered. Yeah, they would have surrendered like they did in World War I, or at the end of it. The reason why the Americans demanded unconditional surrender of Germany and Japan is so that they could put their hands on the levers and change things. And a fool like Eisenhower even understood it. Someone asked him, are you doing the right thing? Like with the Marshall Plan and all that sort of stuff in Europe. Are we doing the right thing with Germany and Japan? I think it was specifically about Germany. And Eisenhower said, we won't know for a couple of generations. And we didn't. But you know what? They kept nuclear arms out of these countries that were sphincter countries. Can you imagine, like, with the Nazis kind of still in power in Germany? Hitler's gone, but some other dude takes over with nuclear arms. Or with the Japanese militarists having nuclear arms. Yeah, Tojo's gone, but some flunkies as bad or worse than him having nuclear arms. The Americans actually set it up so that this didn't happen. So Putin's taken over a country that's just prostrate. It actually didn't really surrender to anyone. There was no surrender at the end of the Cold War. It just kind of fell apart, right? And the Russian people are going, who do we blame? Who do we blame? Well, we're going to blame some Jews. We're going to blame capitalists. And capitalists probably have a lot of responsibility. They won the war, Reagan and Bush Sr. and all that sort of stuff, and then they lost the peace. They lost the peace. In the same way that the Allies after World War I, they won the war, but they lost the peace. They let Germany go kaput, kind of like, they were demanding reparations. Morally, the Germans after World War I should have paid a huge whack of reparations, but, like what happened? So this was worse during the 90s. What the Americans did, and some stupid Russians, what they brought on was shock therapy, which was you get capitalism there as fast as possible. Well, capitalism, guess what? Like communism didn't work, but the economic output went down 40% after communism failed. So it's pure capitalism belongs on the dustbin of history. It's worse than pure communism. That's what happened in the 90s, right? And so the capitalists came in there and they just like freewheeling free markets and stuff like that, and it absolutely failed the Russians, and it failed the world, because now we end up with Putin, and he's trying to destabilize the whole world. I don't know what he's thinking. He's going to get out of it, but meanwhile, China's just sitting there saying, like all the people in Eastern Russia look like us. They don't, well, almost all. The native people, they look like us. They don't look like the Russians. So, okay, Putin, you can get involved in your wars in Syria and stuff like that. Your economy is, like it depends on oil. What happens when the oil runs out? The Russian economy isn't strong right now. Where's it going to go? Is it going to go up? I don't think so. The Chinese are just sitting there saying, okay, stupid fool. So I think the guy was, who knows? But how long? He's about my age. He could live 30 more years, 30 more years, oil runs out. Good luck, Putin. Anyway, this guy isn't that bright. He's kind of like a right-center kind of thing. He's basically right, like I think now, it's probably too late. Well, no, the deal with Putin is stop expanding NATO and all that sort of stuff, and this guy doesn't say it outright, but he's a diplomat. You got to understand, he's crazy. He does not have a good sense of where Russia sits in this world. Russia's population is less than Pakistan. Its economy, it's better than Pakistan, but it's not a world power economically. So what's it got? It's got a lot of nuclear weapons, and Putin. One of the things he did was he increased their military capability. This is one thing that Obama just like missed the boat. 8 years after Obama's in, all of a sudden it wasn't even 8 years. Bush Jr. probably missed it too. Russians get involved in Syria, and all of a sudden, foreign commentators are saying, where'd they get those arms from? Where'd they get those arms from? You can be peaceful in this world. If you don't keep up with things, technologically, the Russians aren't nice. I'm talking about the people who rule them and stuff like that. I don't know what the general people.
About the citizens.
Yeah, exactly right. Hopefully they want peace. But the deal is, you don't keep up with the rest of the people with arms, they'll use their developed arms to take you over. You'll be like the indigenous peoples of North America won't have anything to stand against them. Well, that's just the way of the world. I don't like it. I don't like it in the least, but that's just the way of the world. So, wake up, smell the anthrax.